probably get started. Oh, still got a few more joining. All right. Well, you know what? We're 2 minutes past the hour, so I guess we'll get started. So just real quickly on behalf of CFA Society Winnipeg, welcome everyone to a very special skills-focused event. It's called Financial Modeling Best Practices: 10 Tips to Build a World-Class Model. So my name is Vivek Maharaj. I'm the new programming chair for CFA Society Winnipeg. Just as a quick overview, CFA Society Winnipeg has served the Winnipeg investment community since 1952 by promoting ethical and professional standards within the investment industry. Our society is an active participant and innovator within our international organization, the CFA Institute. We're also a member of the CFA Societies Canada, which promotes advocacy efforts to our regulators. And CFA Society Winnipeg provides our members with professional development and educational opportunities, job placement services, and membership networking events. So today is, of course, an example of maybe an educational opportunity. So we have with us today Ian Schnur, the Executive Director of the Financial Modeling Institute, or FMI. So I'll just give you, I would give you a little bio for Ian, but he told me there's no need to do that. So we're just going to skip past that part. I will mention though, he's the principal and founder of the Marquee Group, which some of you may already be aware of. And the Marquee Group is going to be putting on a VBA for financial professionals course that we're hosting on October 20th and 21st. So for any current or prospective CFA charter holders that are looking to differentiate themselves, understanding how to code VBA is a pretty good way to do that. So don't forget to sign up if you haven't yet. But for today, Ian's going to be reviewing a better way to develop a financial model than just trying to hammer it out on your own. And I think that's really all you need to know. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Ian.
Amazing. Thank you, Vivek. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Well, really thrilled and excited to be here with all of you. I'm going to share my screen. I assume you can see that now, Vivek, right? Excellent. And I'm going to pop open the chat as well and get a list of all of you. Great number of you here today, which is excellent. And by the way, when you see me looking over my right shoulder like this, I'm looking at you because I see a list of all of you in the webinar right now. And I'm looking forward to interacting and chatting with you guys as we go through here for the next 90 minutes, for the next hour and a half. So quickly, I'm going to provide a quick introduction of myself and who I am and what we're going to be doing here today. I've got a lot of content to cover, and I'm excited to be here. We have now, and I'm here, by the way, with my colleague, Julian from the FMI. There's Julian. Julian is responsible for business development and some of our community outreach, and he's going to be helping me and maybe helping me with some of the questions at the end. So Julian and I have now run this webinar probably 40 times all over the world at CFA societies all over the world. We have run this webinar throughout the Asian CFA societies, throughout all of the African societies in Europe, and a whole bunch in Canada and the US. And particularly excited to lead this today for the CFA Society in Winnipeg, because I'm originally from Winnipeg and born and raised in Winnipeg, went to school at the U of M, at the Asper School, graduated and then moved out to Toronto. I'm currently in Toronto with Julian. I'll actually show you, you can see my screen here, but I will quickly show you my page on myself. And so I've been in Toronto for a number of years. I started my career in investment banking. I worked at BMO for a number of years, and then at Citibank. It was called Solomon Smith Barney back then. And then about 20 years ago, I left banking and I started this business called the Marquee Group. You might have heard of it, the Marquee Group. Through the Marquee Group, we run training. We run training all over the world on financial modeling and on valuation and accounting and advanced Excel skills. I've had an opportunity to teach a bunch of times in Winnipeg over the years through the CFA Society in Winnipeg, which has been great. And I want to thank Vivek and Eva for hosting us here today, and the entire CFA Society for having us lead today's webinar. And so this is still a business that I am running, Marquee, and we're continuing to run all sorts of training at banks, pension funds. And as Vivek mentioned, we will be leading a course in a couple of weeks through CFA Winnipeg on VBA. It's a skill that's becoming more and more important for finance professionals to have some coding skills. And so that's coming up in a couple of weeks. But around 5 years ago, so I'm kind of wearing two hats today. Mostly I'm here today in my role at the Financial Modeling Institute, the FMI. And I'll tell you just 30 seconds about that, because I want to jump in and dive in and tell you a little bit about what I'm going to cover and some of the skills I want to share with you today. Approximately 5 years ago, we sort of realized that there was a big change, a shift that happened in the world of financial modeling. It used to be that people would get hired in a role, in some sort of a job, and they would be asked to build models, and they had to figure it out on their own, the way I did many years ago. But around 5 or 7 years ago, we noticed that a lot of employers and recruiters started actually requiring it on, they would put it on job postings, and they would require people to have strong modeling skills before they would hire them, or before they would get promoted. For instance, they had to prove that they had strong modeling skills. And there was no way to do that. There was no way to really prove that you had strong skills other than attending a course. So we went out with some other organizations around the world to build this body called the Financial Modeling Institute. Think of it sort of like similarly to the CFA Institute. We don't run training through the FMI. Our mandate is to provide rigorous, challenging testing in the field of modeling. So it's a 3-level program. The first level, for instance, is called the Advanced Financial Modeler, the AFM level. It's a 4-hour in-person exam. It's virtual now. It used to be live in person, but now we do them virtual. So you write them from home, but it is still proctored and monitored. And you need to build up a model, very much like the one I'm going to show you today. It's a pretty tough exam. And those who pass it get designated with the AFM designation to prove that you got those skills. So that's kind of what we're doing. And then why are we here today? And then I'm going to kind of start the webinar. Why are we here today? Well, the CFA Institute a few years ago became aware of what we were doing. And the CFA Institute told us, right up to the CEO, they told us that the #1 request of CFA charter holders around the world is to please add financial modeling to the CFA curriculum. That's the #1 request that they get. People want the CFA program to include modeling because it's such a critical skill. But they have no plans or intentions to do that. So they liked knowing that we're out there. We share similar approach to examining and to testing, so that when people are interested, they can kind of direct them to the FMI. And as part of our outreach efforts, we developed a 5-part webinar series. Today is topic 1. So literally, we've been running these webinars all over the world. They've been very, very well received. So I hope you guys find some skills that you like today. And today is topic number 1 on financial modeling best practices. I'm going to share 10 of my favorite tips to build, a best-in-class financial model. So that's a little bit about who I am and why we're here and what we're going to be doing. So before we get started into the actual webinar, I always want to make sure everyone's doing okay. Great number of you here, which is awesome. So I like to keep this engaging and interactive if we can. Can you guys let me know just by a raised hand if you can hear okay? I just want to make sure that the volume's okay. Do me a favor. Great. Fantastic. Right? Love it. Right? See it. I can see a bunch of hands. Chris, right? Serious. Thank you. Jesse. Amazing. So a lot of hands going up. You guys can hear okay. Fantastic. I actually ran a webinar last week for a society, a government finance society that had people all over Canada. And it was really fun because I asked people where they were from, and literally I had people from all over Canada in every province, and there were hundreds of people in the webinar, and actually it was on the same topic as we're doing today. And given that I'm from Winnipeg originally, and I still get back to the city once in a while, I'd kind of love to know where are you guys in the city? Where is everyone right now? I'd love it if you want to go into the chat. I'd love to hear where you are. I'm sure most of you are still at home. Where is home for you guys? Always curious when I have a group of Winnipeggers where people actually are. So feel free to dive into the chat. I'm just curious to see how far throughout the city people are. I don't see any yet. Oh, there we go. Exchange District, right? Downtown. Love it. Yeah, Winnipeg. Where else? Okay, excellent. Nice. Oh, you're in the office. Someone's in the office. East Kildonan. All right. River Heights. I grew up in the North End in West Kildonan, and And in Garden City, oh, wow, we've got someone from Edmonton, Island Lakes. Amazing. Okay. So people from further afield. Great. Well, love it, guys. I'm looking forward. Wow. You guys are all over the place within Winnipeg. Great stuff. Amazing. So let's do this. Let's dive into today's tips. So by the way, it is now, well, my clock says 10 after 1. Oh, fantastic. So Kate says Winnipeg now in Toronto. So same as me. I'm right in the annex right now in central Toronto. And let's dive in. So this webinar is going to take around 70 minutes. My goal is to go, let's see, it's noon in Winnipeg. My goal is to go till around 20 past 1 Winnipeg time. And then I'd like to leave around 10 minutes for questions. But as you can tell, I keep the chat open. I really want to keep this engaged, a bit of a two-way dialogue. So if you have questions, feel free to just fire them into the chat. Julian will keep track of them, but if I see them fly up here in the chat, I may just try and address them if it's relevant as I go through. Okay. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to dive right in. And as I said, if you like today's webinar, I'd be more than happy to come back and do another one. This has been really well received. The second one on how do you check and review a model, someone else's model, and there's a few more. By the way, all of the materials that I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to share with you this deck and a model and some notes. We're going to send those to the CFA Society. So you're going to receive all of these materials once the webinar is over. Okay. And then last, the webinar is being recorded. So if you want to watch part of it again, I tend to move quickly. There will be a recording that you can watch after it's done. Excellent. So what I like to then do is start and talk about the fact that I believe modeling is its own discipline. It's more than just a skill set. It's actually its own discipline. Quick show of hands. How many of you do some modeling in your roles right now? How many of you are involved in modeling, do some financial modeling? I'd love to see the hands go up, right? George, I can see Lindsay, right? Adam, bunch of hands going up. Chris, right? How many of you are? A bunch of you are doing some modeling, which is great. Some of you not. I have personally built, I don't know, 100 models. I've been teaching modeling for 20 years. I've been very, very wrapped up in modeling for a long time. And I can tell you that, as I mentioned earlier, it's a critical skill and it's one that's becoming even more important as time goes on. So I always like to start a webinar just by saying, what is a financial model? Now, if we were here together, I would get your insights and feedback. I'll ask you some other things as we go through today. But when I ask, when I ask a group, what is a financial model, I often get a pretty wide range of answers, but I like to simplify it because it is pretty simple. All it is simply a forecast. That's it. When you hear the term financial modeling, at least in the world of corporate finance or, asset management, we're thinking of a forecast. All we're doing is we're building a forecast, typically of a company or a project into the future. That's it. By the way, for those of you who have done some modeling, how far into the future do you typically forecast? What have you seen? Go in the chat. I'm curious to see, what have you seen? What's a typical thing? Yeah, Chris is saying 5 years. I agree with you, Chris. 5 is probably the most common years people use. Has anyone ever seen a longer forecast? I'm just watching the chat now. Has anyone been involved or seen a model that goes longer than 5 years? Anyone seen a model 10? Yeah, Lindsay, you've seen 10-year models. 50, wow. 50 years, sure. So for some assets, like Jordan is saying for hydropower, absolutely. Certain infrastructure, certain industries like natural resources, or or stable businesses or infrastructure businesses like a power plant might go longer. 50 years is pretty long. I got to tell you, a couple of years ago, I saw the longest model I had ever seen. One of our clients at Marquee had built a model in sort of the nutrient space. Yeah, for real estate, 10 years is common. Totally agree, Rhonda. 5 to 10 is the most common that we see, absolutely. But I saw this model a couple of years ago. It blew my mind. The client, a large multi-billion company, had built a model and they forecasted 120 years. And I said, really? You guys really need to forecast 120 years? You're all going to be dead by then anyway. And they said, yeah, that's pretty silly. Well, I don't know why we did that long. And so they cut it down. They cut it down to 60. Thought that was still a little bit long, but whatever. The point is, I will agree with all of you. 5 to 10. 5 to 10 is pretty common, but that's not what's relevant, right? What's relevant is we're trying to build a forecast. That's it. We're simply trying to build a forecast into the future. And then, of course, why? The question I have is why. So why are we building a forecast? Well, and this is why, because I will tell you, models have become, without a doubt, they have become the most important decision-making tool in finance. Full stop. Financial models that we build by looking into the future have become the most important decision-making tools in the world of finance. So many types of decisions are built on the backs of our financial models. Like what? Go into the chat, guys. What types of decisions are people making with the financial forecast that they make, right? Lindsay, what kinds of decisions are you making with your financial models? What types of decisions? There's lots of types of, thank you. Valuation is pretty common, right? Valuation decisions are very common. I'll say purchase decisions. Yeah, absolutely. Should we buy a company? Yeah, excellent. Ying, thank you, right? So M&A decisions, right? Should we merge with another company? Absolutely, right? We do. I've been teaching merger modeling for many, many years. Yeah, absolutely. What's your first name? I see in Edmonton, right? Asset allocation for sure. If you're on the wealth management side, asset allocation, sure. On the wealth management side, people will use models to allocate, thinking about portfolios, etc. What else? Sure, I like that, Jordan. CapEx. So CapEx is sort of a internal internal planning, investing, right? Should we spend another 20 million investing in our plant, right? This is sort of, organic expenditure. Does that make sense? Yeah, love it. Jesse, you said, so credit decisions, absolutely. Credit decisions or lending decisions. Should we loan another $100 million to this company? Can they handle that debt or not? Absolutely. So lots of great reasons. And the point is this, it doesn't matter why you're building the model. These are some very common reasons. My point is models are critical in so many decisions that we make in the world of finance, but there's a problem, and that's why we're here. There's a big problem. The problem is that most financial models are a mess. Most financial models that people build are a mess. In fact, I'll go so far as to say is many of them are a disaster. They make it very difficult to use in order to make these decisions. People struggle to make good decisions because they can't understand or follow the models. So what I want to do over the next hour is show you some critical ideas and skills to make this a very easy, effective process. Guys, quick show of hands. Has anybody here ever built or reviewed or looked at a financial model in Excel and said to yourself, wow, I will never be able to understand this spreadsheet. This thing is a disaster, right? Yeah, I see hands going up, right? A bunch of hands going up. If you spend enough time looking at financial models and spreadsheets, you're going to encounter that. That's not optimal. We can't have models be based on disasters because then it's hard to make the right decision. So what I want to share with you is this. Why is it that so many Excel spreadsheets are disasters? Well, it's because modeling as a discipline, I told you it's a discipline. Modeling is a very multidisciplinary skill. If you want to be good at modeling, you need a lot of different skills. As an example, you have to be pretty good at Excel because that's our tool. You also have to be good at design. I will tell you guys the number one reason why models fail is because of poor design. They're poorly designed, poorly organized. You also have to have some good accounting skills. Do we have any accountants in the room? Raise your hands if you are, if you're an accountant. Any accountants here? There's always a bunch of accountants. Yeah, great, nice, fantastic. A bunch of accountants. Thank you for your hands going up. You don't need to be an accountant. I don't have an accounting designation, but I teach accounting and I teach modeling. You have to understand how do all the numbers talk to each other throughout the financial statements. You need to understand finance and pull it all together. Right. Lindsay, I assume, Lindsay, when you say most of mine, you're referring to models that are a mess. You don't have to admit it. Tell me it was your colleagues or your bosses. It's fine. It doesn't matter. But sure, you know what? A lot of people's models, you're not alone, experience models that are challenging, that are frustrating because they don't always understand the discipline. And so we're going to review some critical steps to building a model with powerful discipline. I want to actually leave you with the end goal. The end goal is this, that a good model needs to work in two different ways, okay? And we'll look at how to do that. How do you know if a financial model, or any spreadsheet for that matter, how do you know if any Excel spreadsheet is working well? Two ways. There's really only two tests. And if your Excel models pass both of these tests, they're probably working pretty well. But if your model only passes one of these tests or zero, it can be a lot better. Number one, I say a good model has to work well electronically. And what I mean by that is that every formula must make sense. So if I was to build a financial model in Excel and I emailed it to you, you should be able to click on every cell and go, yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. I understand what Ian is doing. I can follow every single formula. It makes perfect sense. Guys, quick show of hands. Has anyone here ever looked at a formula in a spreadsheet and the formula was so long that it wrapped around and around? Anyone seen those before? And it kept going around and you got a bit of a headache, right? Rhonda, Mark, right? You need to get a coffee before you can look at it because it was crazy. That's not optimal. And if you ever see someone else do that, don't be impressed. It's not ideal. A good model has to work. Well, Kate said this morning, right? So that is pretty recent. It needs to work well electronically, and I'll show you how to make sure we get there. Number two, a good model has to work well, believe it or not, on paper. Or I'll say, because we're COVID, we're in the age of Zoom, in the age of COVID, I'll say, or as a PDF. You've got to be able to take an entire model, print it, and make it look and feel like a presentation on paper. And why is that? Because even in today's day and age, senior decision makers make decisions by looking at a presentation, by looking at something on paper. Your boss and your boss's boss, the client is not going to be poking around in a spreadsheet, playing with it, all hunched over a laptop. It doesn't work that way. They're going to want to see a nice printout, and most models don't do that. I guess what I'm really saying is a good model needs to be a communication tool. It needs to tell a story. Model builders often don't think of themselves as storytellers, but I want you to change your mindset. If you're working in spreadsheets and in models, you've got to be the best storyteller out there. You've got to use your model as a tool to tell the story of whatever you're modeling. Is it a project? Is it a portfolio? Is it an internal capital allocation decision? What's the story? You've got to be able to walk through it. And if you do that, you have a really clear, powerful model. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to jump through to some additional, I'm actually going to take this off of the print preview mode. We need to make sure, I'll let you read these slides on your own. We need to make sure that our models are dynamic, flexible, intuitive, right? You can take a read of all this, transparent. But how do we get there? Well, we get there by following along with with 10 top tips. And I'm 1 minute away from getting into my favorite top 10 tips to make sure a model is well built and well designed. I guess ultimately we need to make sure that we keep things really simple. Our design, our flow, our Excel formulas have to be clear, legible, and we'll get there. Now, one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest no-nos in models is this: we can't ever hard code. A hard code just means a formula like this, right? Has anyone ever seen a formula like this that says a cell reference, let's say A5, multiplied by some number 0.025 plus 4.9? Has anyone ever clicked on a cell? Raise your hands if you've ever clicked on a cell and seen something like that with like a big dead number, right? George, you've seen that, right? Sydney, we've all seen this in spreadsheets. Can someone tell me, what does the 4.9 mean in my cell right now? What exactly does that 4.9 mean? Why is there a 4.9 in that, right? Kate, you're going to say this morning again, hopefully not. But why is there a 4? What does the 4.9 mean? I have no idea. Thankfully, no one. A week ago, I did this webinar. Someone tried to explain it to me. I said, you don't know what that 4.9 means. I made it up. It's just a dead hard-coded number. The point is you, your boss, your client won't know what this means. We have to make sure that everything we do is very clear and simple. So how do we do that? Well, here's my list of my top 10 favorite best practices. I'm going to go through all of them, but just to give you a sense, it's probably going to take me about a half an hour to go through the first 30 or 40 minutes to go through the first 5. And then I'm going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes on the last 5. And then I'll leave a few minutes for questions. These ones are just as important, very important, but I can do them faster. These ones, I'm going to be showing you some really neat Excel skills in the first 5 as well. So they take a few minutes longer to get through these. So where do we go? By the way, I have a notes file in Excel that you've seen me keep. I will send the notes file to you. And my top 10 tip also lives in the notes file here. So number 1 says that it's so important, model planning. I will tell you that it is so important in any model to build a plan. And I got to tell you, you might be thinking, okay, wow, why is that a big deal? Or maybe you think you do that. Maybe you do. In so many models, when I review people's models, it's very obvious to me that they did not have an effective, strong plan. The model plan will make the difference between whether the model works well versus whether it doesn't. We often call it a scoping document. And I will tell you that there's a 3-step process that we like to follow in order to build a very effective model plan. By the way, in the slides here, you'll see this in the slides on page 15. There is a slide on the planning process, and you can read this on your own. But step number 1 says what I always encourage people to do, and we always do this ourselves on our team, is to identify the major issues. So I'm going to say here, step 1 is to identify the major issues. A lot of people will call this the company's key drivers. And so what does that mean? Well, the key drivers, these are the most important inputs. Let me spell this properly. The most important inputs into the model. And why are they the most important? Because they're hard to forecast and they're hard for management to control. They're hard to forecast. They're hard to control, which means they can be volatile. So you're going to want to run a few different options in your model. These are often things like economic variables, like commodity prices, exchange rates, inflation. So whatever it is that's going to impact your business, you need to ask yourself, what are the most critical variables that I don't know with perfect certainty, or with even that I don't know with any reasonable certainty? We don't know anything with perfect certainty, but what are some things I really don't have a good handle on? If I'm modeling an oil and gas company, obviously their selling price of oil or gas or whatever they're selling is going to be a key driver, because I don't know exactly what it will be over the next 5 years. I'm going to want to run some options. So I strongly encourage you to start by thinking about, for your business that you're modeling, what are those issues that are the toughest for management to forecast? Because in a few minutes, I'm going to show you what we're going to do with those variables. The second thing I strongly encourage you to do in your planning process is to make a list of all other assumptions. And I will tell you, this is often a long list. This is often a long list, and it will include things like the revenue buildup. How exactly are this company going to generate revenue? What types of operating costs do they have to function, right? What exactly how does their labor cost work? How do their maintenance costs work? What about marketing? I want to just ask questions. What you're seeing is The modeler's role is to ask lots of questions. You know, sometimes people think of a modeler as a person who sits in a corner of a room on Excel, like in the dark all day long, banging away on a spreadsheet. That's definitely not the truth. A good modeler has to be so much more than someone that's just sitting in a corner working in Excel. You got to be front and center. A good modeler is often the most central person in any project because you're the one collecting information, entering it, testing it, presenting it, collecting and trying to work through all of it into the tool. I will tell you that in the situations where I've worked on projects or with modelers, I will tell you that the model builder often becomes the smartest person in the room regarding the project, because the model builder comes away with a really good understanding of all the different pieces and they've aggregated all of it. So what else do you want to understand? Well, what are some other assumptions that you need to understand? Other things I want to understand: how do the fixed assets work? How does income tax work? How will the company be taxed? How does the working capital work for this company? What about debt? What about equity? I just need to ask lots of questions and to start getting organized. And the final thing I would say is plan out what it will look like on paper. Once you're done, once it's done, think about what the model will actually look like as a paper tool. In fact, I got a question, and can you guys raise your hands? Who here has built a PowerPoint presentation in the last year? Has anyone here worked on a PowerPoint deck in the past year? Raise your hands. I want to see here. Yeah, right. Wilma, Rhonda, I've seen a bunch of you guys, right? Lindsay, Robert, who else? Keep going. I want to see who else here has been involved, right? Nice. In building PowerPoint presentations, right? A bunch of you. Excellent. So can I ask you, can you guys go to the chat for me for a second? I got a question for you. If you found out this morning that you had to build a new presentation and you were going to present it, let's say in 2 or 3 weeks, what's the first thing that you normally do? The very first thing. We literally just, spoke to our boss and we found out that we need to make a presentation on topic X in 2 weeks. Okay. And you've never made this presentation before. Usually someone goes in the chat and they say, well, I just take the old one. I just change the cover and change the date and that's it. Well, no, let's assume you've never done this before. Good. Okay. So Chris, what's the objective? So let's say we talk about the objective, right, Chris? And we've said, I don't know, the objective is to present a CapEx plan, right? Yeah. So, right. So let's decide that we, great. I love that, Jesse. Who's the audience? Okay. So let me share, let's say we know the audience. We're going to be presenting to a senior decision-making team about investing in a $25 million new piece of machinery that should allow us to become whatever, more effective, more efficient, who knows, whatever. So great. Lots of questions. I love it. You're asking lots of questions. Okay, great. How much time do we have for the presentation? Great. Is it half an hour, an hour? Okay. And then love that. Serious. Learn how much time, right? So how much time do I get? These are excellent questions. Know your audience. What am I presenting on? How much time do I have? I love it. Okay. And then now we know. Okay. So great. So your boss says, good question, Serious. You got an hour. I'd like you to present for 20 minutes and then we'll take Q&A. All right. We'll have Q&A for the remaining 30 or 40 minutes. And we're trying to convince our management team that we really should invest in we want to convince them to make an acquisition, or we want to convince them to to buy a certain piece of machinery. Now you know exactly what the scope is. What do you want to do when you're ready to start working on your PowerPoint? What do you do first? Because this is pretty common. I see this all the time in all sorts of industries. What's the first thing people do? Well, what people often do once they answer your questions, right? Adam, you're saying do some research, love it. But once you're ready to work on the deck, right? Isn't this common? People often create the table of contents, right? Because the table or the outline, right? They build themselves an outline. They think, okay, now that I have to present some sort of an opportunity, first, I'm going to provide some background, right, Adam? I'm going to share with some background, some research, whatever you want, some history. Then I'm going to get into, the investment and some financials, and I'm going to try and think about the order. The order is so important. And I guess my point is this: do exactly My point is do exactly the same for a financial model, because I find people often ask a lot of great questions about a presentation, but you need to do exactly the same thing in a financial model. Whoever said that? Who's the audience, right, Jesse? If I'm building a financial model, who's the audience? What am I trying to convince them of? What's the purpose of the model, right? I love it. You guys asked a lot of great questions in here. Like Chris said, what's the objective of the PowerPoint? Great, I love it. But then people don't ask those questions about their models. And you really want to ask the same questions, right? Look, right here. You guys asked all these. What's the purpose of this model? Why am I making the model? How much detail do I need? Who's going to be there? How should I measure the results? What is the important output that the client wants to know? And I love the way you guys are thinking, but I will tell you, I have seen that people ask those questions in PowerPoint decks, and they often don't do that in their models. So I wanted you to see that a good planning process is a really great way to think about getting started. So what I want to do now is I want to show you a financial model that we are going to be looking at. And this is a model, guys, that we use. This is an example of a model, one of our FMI models. This is a company called the Henderson Manufacturing Company. It's on 5 tabs. It's a 5-tab model. And by the way, this is a very good example of what people have to build on the level 1 AFM exam. On the AFM exam, we give you a case study, we give you a blank Excel spreadsheet, and we give you 4 hours and you go. And we expect people in 4 hours to be able to build something like this with an executive summary, all the tabs you need, and a model. Now I'm going to show you this model, but before I show you this model in Excel, I actually want to show you the model on paper. I actually want to show you the model on paper because I want you to see what it looks like when a model works effectively on paper. Let's imagine that a bunch of you guys were the senior management team. So I'll look at the last few people in the list here, right? So let's imagine that I'm in the chat. Let's imagine Jesse, Hannah, Lindsay, Chris, Rhonda, Kate, you guys were the executive team. And I was going to come to a meeting with you in a boardroom and give you a printout on paper of the model. Or maybe I was going to present it through Zoom, and I'd show you it in a PDF format. Now, I will also have a PowerPoint presentation, but there will also be a model because you guys are going to say, let's look at the model. So I need to be ready to review it. So here's the model. I want to show you the model, but I want to show it to you first as a PDF. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If you ever hand out a model to someone on paper, I promise you the first thing that people always do is they flip it. I promise you, if you ever give somebody a financial model on paper, they will start to flip it. They will flip it really fast. They won't be able to see any numbers, but they're just flipping to get a first impression. Now, look, do you see up here? This model is 15 pages long, 1-5. Look what happens when someone prints it. So take a quick look. So I've got a cover page here, no big deal, a cover page. Next, I have an executive summary here with a few summary tables. After that, when you flip it, there's an inputs page with assumptions. There's another page of assumptions. I'm going to keep flipping pretty quickly because I don't want you to stare at any numbers. Just want you to see what's going on. I have a scenarios page. Next, I have a page that builds up revenue. This is clearly labeled. It's a revenue schedule. Then there's a cost schedule next. The next page is going to be my income statement. And I'm doing this on purpose, very fast, right? It's way too fast to read any numbers. I just want your brain to kind of process and just kind of get a first impression. Take a look here. There's an income statement. There's a cash flow statement. Now it might look small on your screen, but if you were printing, if this was on paper, it would actually, it's normal. It's a 12-point font. It's a normal size font. It looks like that. There's my balance sheet. Okay. You get the idea. I guess my very first question is this. And again, this is, you're presenting this to your team. You're presenting this to a group of people who know how to read financial statements because they asked for this. What's your first impression? What comes to mind? I literally want to know anything. I'm curious. What comes to mind when you see a model that looks like this as I flip it? Anything. It can be positive. It can be negative. What do you think? Does anything come to mind? What jumps out at you? What do you notice on each page that is the first thing your eyes are noticed? Go into the chat. I want to see what you see. Lindsay says it's a beauty. Okay. So first of all, Lindsay didn't even tell me why she says it's a beauty, but that's her first instinct. And I'll tell you probably part of why she's saying that. What else? Yeah, Chris sees the 5-year percent. So Mark has made an interesting comment. Mark is saying it looks professional. He has no idea, right, Mark? You have no idea if it's correct. I might have made 100 mistakes, right, Mark? I hope not. And there are no mistakes. But at this point, Mark is saying it looks professional. Lindsay says it looks like a beauty. Hannah says it looks like it's well thought out. I love that. And you know why people are saying these things? Right? Jesse's looking for the bottom line. I'm going to get there. Bear with me 1 second, Jesse. But here's the only thing I want you to think so far. I want you to feel like, yeah, this looks like a financial presentation. Do you know what your brain is noticed? You know what your brain is noticed, even if it's not conscious? There's a header on every page. There's a subheader that tells you the name of the page. You know what your brain also noticed? Your brain is noticing that the font is the same size on every page. There are things like borders and lines, and there's shading, and there's page numbers, which makes it feel like a presentation. And it feels clear. And what it does, and you'll notice that there's an equal amount of space on the left side and the right side. It feels like a presentation. And people like Mark will say, yeah, right, thank you, a good amount of white space. And what that does is it makes people feel confident right off the bat. Has anybody ever seen a printout from Excel where the numbers were so tiny that you literally couldn't read them? Or you had to turn the page sideways and ups and down and sideways? You lose confidence when that happens. All that's happening right now is people feel like this isn't interesting. This looks professional. Let's read it. And so what I want you to see here now is I want to go through with you and show you and talk about, for a few minutes, optimal model flow. Optimal model flow, because it has such a huge impact on whether the model works well. In any model you ever build, I would strongly encourage you to first build a cover page. And a cover page, it's so simple and people don't do it. Why a cover page? A cover page is it looks professional. It looks professional. By the way, I will tell you that so many models that I look at, most models do not have this, but it only takes 5 minutes. It only takes 5 minutes to make it. It's professional. And what it does is it tells the reader, this is a financial presentation. It's much more, this is much more than just a calculator. It's a financial presentation, and it makes people feel comfortable right off the back. So I already know Mark is in a pretty good mood because I'm presenting this to Mark. Mark's my boss. Mark feels like in the first 30 seconds, Mark feels like, imagine if Mark and Hannah were on the senior team or the client team. In the first 30 seconds, they're feeling like this looks well thought out. This looks professional. And I'm already feeling like I'm off to a good start. The opposite is terrible. When you show someone something that looks like a disaster, they clench up, they get all uncomfortable, and they start to feel like there's issues and problems right off the bat. So we're going to start with a cover page here. Very, very simple. The next thing that I want to share with you is, and what should you put on the cover page? I don't know. Include the company name. This is just examples. Include things like the company name. You can put your name if you want. Put a logo. I don't care. Put dates. And by the way, if you're going to put a date in, if you're going to put in a date into a model, dates in Excel, it can either be static. A static date just means you're going to type it in. Like, look, I'm going to type in October 5th, 2021. It's dead. It's static. I'd love to show you some keyboard shortcuts today. And one of them is this. Does anyone know a keyboard shortcut to put in a date so it's static, so it never changes? Watch this. If let's see, does anyone know this? So Chris, that's going to make it dynamic. I'm going to get to that in a moment, right? There's a couple of ways to get dynamic dates. So Chris, we'll save that for a second. But Chris, what if you just literally want to type in a date and you want it to always be that date? So October 5th, 2021, I don't want it to change. Does anyone know the keyboard shortcut in Excel? It's control and semicolon. Watch this, guys. If you go to a cell, you can try it if you want, and you press control and the semicolon, it punches in today's date. It just saves you a couple seconds, and that's today's date. I wanted you to see that because one of the resources we're going to share with you when the webinar is over, we're going to share with you our list of some of our favorite keyboard shortcuts, both in PC or in Mac format. It's really important to work very quickly on the keyboard. And so you're going to receive this from Coming Today, a list of our favorite keyboard shortcuts. But what if you want the date to change and you want it to be dynamic? Well, then of course you could use Excel's equals, right, Chris, the today function. You could use Excel's today function, or there's another one. Does anyone know the other way that you can, does anybody know the other way you can put in a date so it's dynamic? There's only two ways. Equals today. Thank you, Ying. Excellent. Ying knew that. Equals today, equals now. Ying, what's the difference? What's the difference between today and now? See, today, well, if I type in equals today, it returns today's date. Very nice. But what does now do differently, guys? Ying, yeah, it has time. Thank you. Now includes the time as well. Excellent. A couple simple ways to get started. Very, very nice, very easy. And I wanted to show you a couple tips there. The second thing I would strongly encourage you to include in any model you ever build is an executive summary page. And I will also say most models do not have this, but it's so important to have an executive summary. Why? Why is it so important? Why is it so important to include an executive summary in your model? And it's what you said, Jesse, right? It's sort of what Jesse's saying. Why do we need an executive summary? Jesse's looking for the bottom line. Why do we want an executive summary? I promise you, the first thing your client always wants to know is what's the answer? Thank you. Right, Ying? What is the answer? What is the answer? And I will tell you, this page must be customized for your project, your boss, your client, whatever. It must be customized. So I will say, if your client likes graphs, include graphs, right? If they like tables, include tables. Sometimes I will tell you guys this. So here's our executive summary again. Here's my executive summary. Sometimes people will look at the executive summary in this model. I've had it happen in webinars and people say, oh, I don't like this executive summary. It's boring. I agree with you. I agree with you. But as a good model builder, my job is to find out what does the decision maker need to help them make a decision. For this project, our decision maker said, Ian, I like to keep it simple. Just show me in a little table, what do we think revenue is going to look like and the revenue growth rate? What do we want EBITDA? What do we think EBITDA and our EBITDA margin will be? And what do we think net income and net income margin? So whatever. The point is, if my decision maker wants this, that's what I built. But we did it three ways. We did it with the base case, we did it with the best case, and we did it with the worst case. That's it. That's all I have here. That's because that's what the client wanted. But if your client likes visuals, if they like other information, great. That's what you should include. Make sure it's customized for your needs. And of course, you build this page last. It's so important because, again, as I said, every time we've shared a model, people want to know, what is the answer? What is the answer? So the next thing, though, I would strongly encourage you to do, and this is going to get me back to my top 10 list, is I strongly encourage you to include in the flow now to put all the assumptions. I would say next, include all the assumptions in the model. So take a look here. Let's come back. So do you notice I've got my executive summary, and then right after the executive summary, I flip and we start getting into all of the model's inputs and assumptions. And I have 2 pages. So I have a page, right? You can see I've got boxes with pricing assumptions. Here's all my cost assumptions, all my depreciation assumptions, my interest rate assumptions. And then on the next page, I ran out of room. So I have another page with my CapEx assumptions, my working capital assumptions. You see what's going on here. I guess my big question is why? Why is this next? Why is this the next thing you always want to show your boss or your client in the model? Show the executive summary and then show them all the assumptions. Why is that? Can someone put in the chat? This will happen. It's happened to me literally every single time I've ever presented a model. What's the reason for this? What's the reason? Well, it's pretty simple. It's because every time you, yeah, exactly, right, Ying? Do you see what Ying said? Every time you present the answer, your client, I promise you, will want to know, right, Ying? They will say, how did you get there? How did you get there? What decisions did you make to get there? And I will tell you, this is a very simple page to build if you first built a plan, if you first planned it. If you made a really nice plan like we did up here, right? If you properly planned and organized your model and you made a list of all the information you need, it will be very, very easy. It'll be very easy to design this page. Watch, look at my model. In my actual Excel file, I have a cover. Then I have a sheet for the executive summary. I like to keep that separate on its own sheet. And then next, we have all of the assumptions. Again, you're going to get this model sent to you, but I literally used my planning process to then go to one sheet and have all my assumptions here. And by the way, one very common convention you're seeing in modeling is regarding colors. And I will tell you, in models, it's very common for formulas in models to be black and for inputs to be blue. That's a very, very standard modeling convention. Formulas black, inputs blue. Why is that? Just so it's clear. Most people can see easily the distinction between the black numbers and the blue numbers. So you know that these cells were the data inputs. So you could play with them, you could change them. I got a question. Can you raise your hands? Has anybody ever seen a financial model that did not have an assumption page? Because if you don't have an assumption page, where are the assumptions? Where are all the inputs in your model? If they're not collected up front, where are they? Where are they? Well, where they are is they're scattered everywhere. Has anyone ever seen, I'm looking over at your names. Can you raise your hand if you've ever seen a model where the assumptions were scattered everywhere, all over the place, every sheet, right? Thank you. I'm seeing some hands go up, right? Rhonda, anyone else? Who else, right, George? I'm seeing hands go up. Yeah, Chris has raised his hand and volunteered for the chat. Thank you, Chris, for taking one for the team. But I promise you, Chris, you're not alone. A lot of people build models, and what they do is they enter their assumptions everywhere. And I'm going to tell you why Chris might do that, because there's actually a good reason. The reason, so what happens is, what that means is when they go to their model sheet, let's say on the cost page, here's my cost forecast, or let's say on the income statement in all. Now, by the way, do you guys see on my income statement, I have blue numbers. That's okay. These numbers are blue because they're in my historical. These are my historical numbers. So those are blue. That's fine. Those are inputs. Those are dead. But in this particular model, we're forecasting. This is when we were forecasting from 20 to 24. It doesn't matter. It can be whatever period you want. But the forecasts are they're all formulas. They're all links. There's no inputs. What a lot of people do is they put their data inputs right here in the forecast. It makes it very hard to tell the story because your client wants to know, remember, what's the answer? And then how did you get there? All the inputs. But what I want to show you are two reasons why. I'm going to show you why people do it. And now I want to show you two excellent skills. Chris, I think you're going to like these two skills I'm going to show you. I will tell you, people often scatter their inputs. And this is why. They tell me this all the time. People often scatter their inputs so that they can see the results easily from changing the inputs. This is what I mean. Look at my model, right? Chris, you might be frustrated with this. Like, let's imagine, so Chris said that he has models where his inputs are right with his formulas. Here's why some people do that. Take a look. Let's pretend, Chris, we were using a raw material cost of 226. And then we found out that actually it should be 256. Okay, I'm going to change. Do you guys see this? I'm going to change my raw material cost and make it 256. Okay, fine. Fine. So I did that. But the problem is what happened? I don't know what changed, right, Chris? If I want to see what happened, I have to go into the model now. Now I have to go to the income statement and I got to say, well, what did that do to the EBITDA? What did that do to my net income? Okay, now I can see. And then if I want to change it again, I got to go back and I'm going to put it back to what it was. So people often feel like they're always jumping around from the assumptions back to the model, back and forth. Every time they change an assumption, they have to jump around. And I agree with you, that's not optimal. So what I want to show you is there are two great skills to keep assumptions up front. There's two great skills to keep the assumptions up front, but see the impact on the results. And one is by use Excel's watch window tool. This is a really great tool. Guys, I've run this webinar, as I've told you, probably 40 times around the world. A very small percentage of people have ever used this tool, but people often really like it. Has anyone here used this feature before, Excel's watch window? Chris, you ever use this? The watch window feature at all? It's not well known, but it's really powerful for any Excel spreadsheet you build. Watch this skill, guys. I think you're going to like this feature. You haven't used it. Okay, excellent. We'll take a look. You're going to understand it. It's so simple. I bet you, Chris, most people here haven't seen it. And I want to share it with you because I think it's really simple and I think you're going to like it. Watch this. It lives under formulas. Watch window. Take a look. Okay. I'm going to go formulas. And then there's a button here called what? And you're probably thinking, what the heck? I never noticed that button before. That's because, well, it's always been a part of Excel. It's always been in Excel, but it's not always been on the menus. They recently added it just a few years ago into the menus. It used to be hidden. Now, if you're using your keyboard, it would be Alt, and then I'm going to press the letter M, Alt M, and then W. Alt M, W opens the watch window. So look what it does. Alt M and W is how you're going to get there. Let's go do it together, guys. Well, just watch me, please, for a second. Look how it works. I'm going to go to my model and I'm going to say formulas, watch window. And it says, okay, what do you want to watch? I'm going to say, let's add a watch. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, let's watch the first 3 years of EBITDA on my income statement. Just watch those. And I'm going to click add. Okay, done. There they are, right, Chris? There they are. I'm going to add another one. Let's also watch. I'll go back in. Let's watch the first 3 years of net income, whatever. I'm going to watch those 3 years of net income and I'm going to click add again. And now I have those in here as well. Very simple. But now look how nice this is, right, guys? Take a look. If you were going to increase your cost to 256, please keep your eyes in this box. When I press enter, watch what happens. Every single number change. So isn't that nice? Now I can change my assumptions and I can immediately see what that's happening to my credit ratios, my net income, my cash flow right up front. Very nice tool. Guys, give me, by a show of hands, who's going to try this? I want you to try this after. Who's going to try this tool when you get back to your desk in the next time you have an Excel file? Raise your hand if you think you'll try this. I really hope you do, because I think you'll find it really helpful. Yeah, lots and lots of hands going up. Excellent. Yeah, tons of hands going up. Thank you. I hope you do. I ask you to do that because if you raise your hand, now you're committed. Now you're committed. So you have to try it. But I really hope you do because I really believe you'll find it really, really helpful. It's a really nice tool. People tell me that once they use it, they love it and they use it all the time. That's nice. That's one nice way to keep your assumptions up front, but watch what's happening later on. Well, the second thing to do is to use Excel's camera tool. And you might be thinking, whoa, I didn't know Excel could take pictures. I'm guessing most of you also haven't used the camera tool. It's not a very commonly used tool. Look at my screen. Did you guys notice on the top of my screen, There's a button here that says camera. Thinking, what the heck is that? Excel is going to take pictures. Well, it kind of does. Okay. Now, first of all, the camera tool is in, this is called my quick access toolbar, the QAT. The QAT, the quick access toolbar, is here, and I added the camera. The reason why you may have never heard of the camera tool is because it's hidden. This tool is hidden. You need to enable it. You need to enable it. So how do you enable the camera tool? You do this. How do you enable the camera tool? You go to the File menu, and then you go down to Options. Take a look. File Options. And from File Options, you go to your Quick Access Toolbar. Remember, this is being recorded if you want to watch this tip again. But you go Excel Options, then you go to your Quick Access Toolbar, and watch this. When you're here, you can click on All Commands. And this gives me a list of every single, this gives me a list of every single command in Excel. There are hundreds. You probably had no idea that there were so many features in Excel. Most of them are not on the menus. They're hidden. So look at these are just all the A commands. Go check it out on when we're done the webinar. All these features in Excel that maybe you never heard about before. And they all do interesting different things. I'm still in the A's. Now I'm in the B's, and in the C's, look, there's a feature called camera, and you can click add, and then it goes into the right. And when it's here, it will appear in your quick access toolbar. So now you see how I got it there. Well, now it's very simple. Watch this. Let's pretend I want to take a picture of my income statement. Watch this. I will select my income statement and then click the camera, which is going to take a picture of it. There it is. I just took a picture of my income statement. Now, when I go back to the assumption page, I will literally go off to the side here and I will click once. By clicking once, it has pasted it. And it looks like a picture, right? I literally pasted this as a picture, but this is much better than just a dead picture. Check it out. If I change my operating cost to 256, take a look when I press, watch please the income statement when I press enter. All the numbers change. This is a dynamic picture. So you can take pictures of different pieces of an Excel file, move them up front, and as you make a change, you can watch exactly what's happening. So I showed you these for the following reason. I'm going to come back and I want to do a quick check-in now. We've now covered the first four. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes on the next one, and then I'm quickly going to go through the last five very, very quickly as before we wrap up. I said that if you're going to build a good model, you really want to build a plan and ask lots of great questions. I encourage you to keep all the assumptions up front. And I told you that if you're going to keep the assumptions up front, use features like the watch window and the camera so that you can keep your inputs up front, but observe what's happening deep in the model to your results. And I told you to make your inputs blue so that they are very clear. The next thing I want to show you is how to build an extremely powerful page quickly called the scenario page. And then we're going to wrap up with five. These are very much related. These five I can go through very, very quickly because they're all kind of related to each other. But before I get to that, I want to touch on point 5 here, which is build a scenarios page. Build a scenarios page. And in terms of model flow, I will tell you that it is really important to have a scenarios page in a model. Every model, I will tell you, every model you ever build should include a scenarios page. It is so important. Let's take a look at it. So it's so important that we have a separate tab for it. And look what it's doing. I have more variables here. Do you see this, guys? I've got cost inflation. I've got selling prices. And I've got my sales volumes. I've got more variables. It's actually just more assumptions. These are just more assumptions. But what's different about these assumptions? Well, these assumptions, I have 3 cases. I've got a base case, a best case, a worst case. See that? I've got a base, best, worst. Base, best, worst. Let's just jot this down. I'll just say this is just more assumptions, but these ones have multiple cases. In my model, I have a base case, a best case, and a worst case. So the question is why? Why do I have a base, best, and worst just for these variables, guys? Why did I build a base, best, and worst for these? Well, I know you're thinking this. It's because these are the key drivers that we planned out earlier. These are the key drivers. These are the most important variables. These are the ones that are really hard to forecast, hard to control, like cost inflation, or if I had an exchange rate issue, there would be exchange rates, sales prices. These variables are hard to forecast, so I have more than one option. So I want to very quickly show you how to build this, and then we'll move on to the last part of the webinar. So what do you do? Let me move this out of the way. How do you build a scenario page? Now you're going to get this file, guys. Don't forget, you're going to receive this model. Please spend 5 minutes when you receive it and look at this page, because you can replicate this page in any model you ever build. Step 1 is to populate the large rectangle. The large rectangle is just inputs. These are just inputs. That's why they're blue. You literally talk to your client, talk to your boss, talk to your team, and you have to say, what do we want to use for base case, for best case, for worst case? They're literally data inputs. That's it. Next, what you do is you build a switch. A switch is just a number, as a raw number in a cell. Look, it's the number 1. So I have a cell with a number 1 in it. Very simple there, no big deal. Well, what I want to show you now is this, the skinny row. This is the live case. This is the live case, and the live case is the one running in the model. So I'll write that. This case is the one running the model. The model is running off the top case. This is the active case. So what's going on here? Well, I need a formula. And what the formula does, right, guys? The formula says, hey, look at the switch. And if the switch has a 1 in it, then pull up the base. Make the base case go here. And then this one will go into the model. But watch this. If the switch has a 2 in it, now my live case is lifting up the best case and pulling that up. And finally, if I have a 3 in here, the skinny row is lifting the worst case, which means the model is running the worst case. So then the question is, how do we build the skinny row? How do I make this skinny row? I will tell you, most people use if statements. Guys, show of hands, how many of you have used if statements before in the past? How many of you have built lots of, how many of you could keep going? Raise your hands. Let's see how many. Great. A lot of you, right? Katie, Kate, Lindsay, Josh, tons of you have used, sure. What's the problem with using an if statement here? Well, the problem is it gets long, right? The problem is it would get long, but it would need to be nested. I would need to have an if within an if within an if. Can you guys go to the chat? Now, please type in the chat. How many times does Microsoft Excel allow you to put an if inside an if inside an if? Can you take a guess? Go into the chat. How many times are you allowed to have an if inside an if, inside an if, inside an if? Kind of don't know. What's your guess? Hannah, 10. Lindsay's guessing 10. It used to be 7. It used to be 7 a few years ago, but somebody thought at Microsoft that we should increase the number. You can now have up to 64 nested if statements. It's called a disaster. You should never do that because formulas get so long. So what we're really going to do instead, and by the way, I've got a slide for this, guys. Can I show you something in the presentation? In the presentation, we have a few pages that include modeling skills. So you can read these on your own. But the one that I want to show you is on page 23. So look for this when we're done. One of my favorite tools in Excel is called the choose function. And you can always use a choose function in a model, and it simply looks like this. Watch this, guys. The choose function just says, where is your switch? And then where are the choices. Look at that. Look how simple this is. If I used an if statement here, I'd have to have a nested if 3 times. It would get very long. A choose function just says, where's your switch and where are the 3 choices? That's it. When the switch has a 1, it pulls out the next item, which is the base case. If the switch has a 2, it will pull out the second item, which is the best case. And if the switch has a 3, it pulls out the third one. It's very elegant. It's so simple. Guys, clients love this feature because it's so simple. It's so elegant and it's so easy. So I really, really encourage you to try it. Who's going to try this after? I hope who's going to go to, I want you to try it, please. If you tell me you're going to do it, then you'll do it. So who's going to go after and try to use a choose? Great. Excellent. A lot of hands going up. Great. Love it. Please try to use Please try to use a choose function. You're going to like it. You're going to realize how simple it is. And you might be able to even realize that you can remove a bunch of if statements from your Excel files with this feature instead. It's much simpler and much more elegant. Finally, on this page, I want to show you how to build this drop down, and then we'll get into the final part of the webinar here. You know, I don't ever like to leave this number 1. I don't want my boss to see this number 1, right? I don't want anyone to touch that number 1. What's the problem with this number 1, right? Imagine that you showed your boss a model and what your boss saw on the scenario page is a little 1. They just saw a 1 there. What's the problem? Can someone go into the chat? What's the problem with your boss or your client just seeing a little number 1 floating there? Yeah, right, Hannah? You don't know what it means. Why is there a 1 there? Why the heck is there a 1, right, Hannah? Why 1? Why not 2? Your client's going to be confused. I don't want to leave that 1 there. Thank you. I want to use a drop-down box instead. So I'm going to spend 1 minute showing you how to build this. I'm going to do it very fast. You can come back and watch this again. There's also a slide in the presentation on how to build it. Oops, right here on page 25 on how to use a drop-down, but let me do it really fast and then you'll be able to see it and build these on your own. What do? You need to go to your developer menu in Excel. Look at that. I'm in my developer menu, but hang on. You're saying, wait a second. I don't have a developer menu on your computer. Some of you probably don't have the developer. I do. You might not. You might not. You all have it, but you have to enable it. So if you do not see developer, you once again need to go to your options, file, options. And if you're on a Mac, you go to Excel preferences. Okay. Again, if you're on a Mac, you'll go Excel preferences. And what you need to do is go down to customize your ribbon, customize the ribbon, and you need to turn it on. This will be off. On your computer, it'll be off, the developer tab. You have to put a check mark and turn it on, and then it will always stay on. You just need to turn it on once. So look what you do. You literally go to your developer tab. You go insert. You go to the form controls at the very top, and then you click the combo box. That's it. You click combo box. And I've done this way so you can go back and rewatch it again if you want to see it one more time. And then all you do is you literally draw one. That's it. Look what I did, guys. I just drew it. I just drew one on my screen. Very simple. Now that you draw it, all you need to do is right-click on it and go to Format the Control. That's it. I'm going to click on Format Control, and it just wants to know 2 things. So simple. It says, where's your input range and where's the cell link? Where's the input range? Where's the cell link? What's the input range? Well, this means where are the words? Where are the words? Where's the range of words that you want to see in the dropdown? Well, that's here. That's the range of words. And the cell link, what's that? That's just the switch. That's it. You just link to the switch. That's all you do. I'm going to delete this one because that's what I did here, right? I said, where is the range of words and where is my cell link? Where's the switch? And then when you open it up, you get your 3 words. You get your words, base, best, and worst, and it's done. It's so simple. It's very easy, guys, because when you click on base, all it does is it enters a number 1 in this cell. This is not a macro. It's not VBA. It's very simple. When you click the second option, it puts a number 2 in the switch. And when you click the third option, it puts a 3. That's it. That's all it does. And so now your boss doesn't have to worry about changing a number and screwing up the number. They just play with the switch, and they love the switch because it's very user friendly. But hang on, I don't want anyone to see this number. So what do I do now? I right click on it one more time to activate it. And then I literally move it and cover it up. And now I can slide it around and click away. And now I've got this really beautiful user-friendly dropdown to allow my client to play with the model without ruining it, without breaking it. Okay. And so that's why I strongly encourage you. This is such a powerful page. That's why I wanted you to see, make sure in your models, you build a cover page, a scenario page, I'm sorry. And the scenario page is so simple. It's so powerful. You simply start with your inputs. You use a choose function to pick the appropriate one that you want to run, and you build a dropdown. Guys, every single model, every single spreadsheet you build can benefit from a feature like this. Okay, so where are we at? We've got, I'm going to spend probably about 5-6 more minutes. I'll probably go about 7 more minutes, and then we will stop and I'll leave some time for questions. But I want to go through the last 5. The last 5 are extremely important, but they're fast. They're easy to talk about. So when I talk about them for 1 minute, you'll understand. And I hope that you think about them when you build your own models. The first one, number 6, says, when you build a model, build your financial statements vertically. It's a little bit more efficient. Okay, great. Vivek, so it says, build the financial statements vertically. Watch this, guys. You see here on my model sheet, everything has been built vertically. I've got my income statement. Underneath it, I've got my cash flow statement. Underneath it, I've got a balance sheet. I've got a question. Has anyone here ever seen a financial model where each financial statement was on a separate sheet? Can you raise your hands? I'm looking, right? Chris, you've seen that. George, you've seen that, right? A lot of you raising your hands, right? What I mean is, in a lot of models, people have an income statement tab and then a balance sheet tab. And then, Chris, I love it. Let's chat after. Yeah, no, and by actually, Chris, I'm going to tell you something, right? Very important. That's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's not wrong to have an income statement tab and a balance sheet tab and a cash flow statement. I want to be very clear. There's nothing wrong with that to Chris or anyone else, right? Chris has taken one for the team, for everyone here, but Chris is not the only one. A lot of models, actually, there's a name for that, Chris. It's called a horizontal approach. You'll notice here, this is what we call a vertical orientation. A vertical orientation in a model means most pieces have been structured vertically. A lot of people build models on where everything is on a separate sheet. So this model, they might have on 10 or 15 different sheets. By the way, at the FMI, remember I told you at the FMI, we evaluate people's modeling skills on exams. And if you can build a model like this, you can get your AFM designation. But we're agnostic. We actually don't care when we grade exams. We don't care if people build vertically or horizontally. There's a lot of parts of the world, like for instance, when I run webinars in Australia or in Asia, they like doing things a little bit more horizontal. That's fine. My recommendation, though, on building vertically is only because I can tell you I have seen so many more errors, a lot more errors in models when people build on lots of sheets, because you have to crisscross. You're always linking back and forth to different sheets. Look how simple this is, right? And Chris, tell me if you like this. You guys know this. Look, every income statement in the world starts with revenue, and every income statement ends with net income, right? I'm telling you, know that, right? Everyone knows that. Every income statement ends with net income. But let's go down here, right? Watch this, Chris. On my cash flow statement, you know this. cash flow statement begins with net income. So where is it? Well, look at that. It's right above me. It's so easy to link. It's so easy to navigate, to see what's going on. I know I got it perfect because I'm staying vertically, same sheet, same column. Very easy. What about my depreciation? Where I'm going to add that back right above me. My model becomes like a giant waterfall. Everything just rolls down the page. Now, you also know this, right, Chris? Every cash flow statement ends with ending cash, right? The last line on a cash flow statement is ending cash. Where does it go? Well, the balance sheet always begins with ending cash. So it's very easy to get your model working when you stay aligned, stay vertical. And I just find you'll minimize errors. And that's why, listen, if you want to build on lots of sheets, that's fine, but be aware, be mindful. I definitely see more errors when people go horizontal. If you've never tried going vertical, try it. Try it because it is people who try it find that they really like it. It's really simple. Last few things I'm going to do really quick here, and then I'll leave a few minutes for questions. Is it says don't do any work on your financial statements. Do your work on schedules. I'm going to do 7 and 8 together. What does that mean? I never want to see any big formulas on the financial statements. Watch this. Look at my income statement, guys. My income statement has a link. Revenue is a link, and a tiny calculation, a little subtraction. Look at this. Cost of goods sold is a link. Depreciation is just a link. There's no giant formulas on my income statement. All I have is little sums or subtractions. What about my cash flow statement? It's just a link. It's so simple. My point was, don't do any work on your financial statements. Do your work on schedules. So what does that mean? Well, if I go to my income statement again, I showed you that my revenue line is a link to K26. So where is it coming from? Let's go up there. Well, where it's coming from is the bottom of a revenue schedule. It's coming from the bottom of a revenue schedule. What I like to say in models is build it, then link it. Build it, and then link it, right? So we like in modeling sayings, I like to say, build it, then link it. That means build a schedule, then link it in. Never build big formulas right on your financial statements. That's a recipe for disaster. What about this? I have a cost schedule. I lay out, I organize all my operating costs. I get down to total costs. Super simple. And on my income statement, when I need my cost of goods sold, look at that. It's just a link. Build a schedule, link it in. It makes it so easy to read and understand. So easy. Finally, so it says, don't do any work on your statements. Do all your work on various schedules. And then the last 2 tips of the webinar are simple formulas. Build very, very simple formulas. How do you build simple formulas? You repeat the data. I asked you earlier if you'd ever seen big, crazy formulas. The reason people have big, crazy formulas in models is because they don't repeat their data. Repeat your data, repeat all your data, and then use it. What am I talking about? Let's go to the revenue schedule above. Look at my revenue schedule, guys. I have a section for pricing. I have a section for volumes. Well, and then revenue is really simple. Watch, revenue is just price times volume. That's easy. But what about the pricing section? The way pricing works is that there's a gross selling price. Then we deduct freight and warehousing charges, and then we get down to a net selling price. So my net price, look at this, guys. My net price is gross minus the freight. Really simple. But the reason it's so simple is because I repeated the gross selling price. That's an assumption. So repeat it. And then I repeated the cost inflation. I repeated cost inflation. Why did I repeat cost inflation? So that my freight expense can be so simple. Look at my freight expense. It's just previous times 1 plus the inflation. Everything I need is right here. And my net charge is A minus B. When you look at this model, guys, and you go down the page, look, it's so simple. I have a link, a tiny calc, another repeat, an assumption, another repeat, an assumption. Look, all the way down, every single formula. I have a lot of detail, but every formula is just a link. Here's a link to an assumption page, and then a tiny calculation. Nobody is going to struggle to understand my formulas. Every single formula is so tiny and so self-explanatory, and that's the key. So I said here, right, my sayings, number one, our build link it. The second one says repeat and link. It sounds similar. What I mean that is repeat every assumption, then use in formulas every time. I promise you, if you do that, you will have very clear, best-in-class models. So I've gone close to the end here. Apologize for that. I'm happy to stay a bit late. If you guys want to stick around for another 5-10 minutes, I'm happy to if you have questions. But let me just quickly recap. You know, I told you today that models have become more and more important, so critical for every type of decision people use. But the problem is models are very often a real disaster. How do you test your models? Use these two criteria. And my promise is, if you can go through today's webinar, think about every tip, the plan, the design, keep your assumptions up front, use the Excel skills I showed you, and design your model in this approach where it's vertical, where you have simple formulas on schedules. You're going to have some of the best models around. It's not difficult, but people don't do it. So guys, I hope you left with some ideas on design, on skills. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me here or at my Marquee Group email address, because through Marquee, we run training I'll put my Marquee Group email address there as well. You're welcome to reach out to me as well anytime. So are there any questions? If you have any questions, guys, why don't you type them in the chat? Again, we're happy to stay a few more minutes. There's still everyone is still here, which is amazing. We can either unmute you or you can type a question into it. Does anyone have any questions? You can type in the chat or raise your hand if you like, and we can just unmute you if you have any questions. Anyone? I see a hand. Sounds like maybe not. Anything?
So, yeah, I was messaged one question. Ian.
Okay, you got a question, Julian? What's your question?
Yeah, so Edwin says, great presentation so far. Are there tools other than Excel spreadsheets that are used for modeling?
It's a great question. I will tell you that there are two general categories for building models. One is to use a spreadsheet. The other is to use some sort of software, a black box piece of software. There's a whole bunch out there. There's lots and lots of software tools. People do one or the other. The software tools that are out there, people often get frustrated with because you can't customize them. You can't, analyze them the same way you want. If you're going to be doing it in a spreadsheet, Excel is still the most common. We're doing more and more work in Google Sheets, but most organizations, if they're using spreadsheets, are still using Excel. And so that's pretty common. We see even some of the biggest companies in the world do their planning and forecasting and budgeting and modeling. They still do it in Excel, not in black box software, because they just find that it's just easier to do exactly what they want. So no, I'm not an expert in all the software packages out there. There's things like Hyperion, SAP. There's lots of little ones and big ones, but it's still very, very common to use Excel. Do you have anything else, Julian?
That's it from my end.
Anything else, guys, people want? Okay, well, I'll take that as a sign that that you're good. You're welcome to email me. Guys, I hope everyone stuck around, so I'm going to take that as a good sign. I hope that you guys came away with a few new tools and skills and ideas. This will elevate your game for sure in the world of modeling. If you can make sure you're doing all these skills, you will be best in class. Doesn't take more than that. So I really want to thank all of you for coming out today. It's always great to be here. Don't worry, I am still a big bomber and jet fan, and that is the only way to go. Julian has dumped in the link for the upcoming VBA workshop. Thank you, Julian, it's on the CFA Society website. It is becoming a more and more important skill. So if you're interested in that, also hope to see you there, or let us know if you have any questions. So guys, enjoy the rest of your, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, your week. Always nice to be here, and look forward to being in touch if you have any questions. Okay. So thanks everyone. You'll watch for the files coming your way, and I hope to be in touch with some of you again at some point. Okay. Thanks for being here, and maybe we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks all.